the way, as you read Dies Domini, it becomes a very frustrating document. Because John Paul II argues mostly from a philosophical perspective. He's a philosopher. And so he just philosophizes, and he reasons, he uses human reason to try and prove that Sunday is the day of rest. But he has no, thus saith the Lord from Scripture. So he says in paragraph 27, Christian reflection and pastoral practice changed it. Since when does Christian reflection change the day of worship? Since when does pastoral practice have a right to change the day of worship? Paragraph 63, he says, Christians, called as they are to proclaim the liberation won by the blood of Christ, who felt? Christians, right? Felt that they had the authority to transfer the meaning of the Sabbath to the day of the resurrection. Who gave Christians such a right? Only God would have the right to change the day. And if the papacy claims to have made the change, they must claim that they have the power and prerogatives of God. That's why 2 Thessalonians 2 says that the man of sin sits in the temple of God, which is the church, showing himself that he is God. Notice paragraph 81. He says, the spiritual and pastoral riches of Sunday, as it has been handed on to us by tradition, are truly great. Are you catching as you read carefully where he says the change comes from? He can provide no verse from the Bible that justifies the change whatsoever. He appeals to history as he interprets it. He appeals to arguments from reason. He appeals to philosophical arguments. But never can he present a text where thus saith the Lord. Listen, folks, if we're going to change the day that we worship upon, we better have a thus saith the Lord. A few years ago, I was speaking in Argentina. And one evening I preached a sermon on the harlot of Revelation 17. And I said, tonight I'm going to preach this sermon about the harlot of Revelation 17. I'm going to give you all of the characteristics, but I'm not going to tell you what system this applies to. But you're going to know, I said, by the characteristics, which system in the world this harlot is referring to. And so I preached the sermon. I gave, a woman represents a church. A harlot woman is a fallen church. She sits upon many waters, which means it's a world church. She fornicates with the kings of the church, which means that she's involved in politics. She's decked with gold and silver and precious stones, so she must be a very rich church that majors in these materials. She has daughters because she's called the mother of harlots, daughters that were born from her. And so I went through all of the characteristics. And I never identified what system it was referring to. The next morning, I was in a room where I had interviews with students. They could come and they could ask questions, and I would pray for them. They would have prayer requests. This woman came in. Actually, she was a young lady, and she says, Pastor, I want you to know that you offended me last night. I looked at her and I said, really? I offended you? Why did I offend you? She said, well, you didn't offend me. You offended my church.